All right, so good evening and welcome to the AID Family Council for this evening. And tonight is an advisory meeting. So we have a few subjects to ask for your input about, and then I'll update you on kind of what's going on with the hours and rate issue that we talked about last month, and then we will be done. But I think we'll go ahead and ask people to introduce themselves, just to make sure that everybody knows who everybody is. So if you would share your name and what your connection to AID is, and whatever way you want to share that. I'm Lori Baker. I'm the president and CEO of the Association for Individual Development, and I'll tag over to Jim.
Yeah, I'm Jim Gould. I serve on the board at AID. My son David receives services at the Elgin Center and day services, and lives in a group home in Elgin. And why don't I bounce it to Sue, since we're playing
Popcorn
tag team here.
Yeah.
Me?
You.
Oh, okay. All right. My story is basically the same as Jim's, because we used to be married. So yes, we have a son that lives in Elgin in a group home. And I just FYI, I contacted another parent who usually comes on, and she said she was going to be joining.
Oh, good.
So
Yes.
so Barb should be on soon.
Yep, here she comes.
There you go.
I just let her in.
Perfect.
Candace.
Okay. Hi, I'm Candace Goldstein. I have a 32-year-old son who lives in a group home in Aurora and attends the day program at Keeler.
Kathy.
I'm Becky Simmons, and I have a son, John, who attends the Elgin Training Center program, day program.
Kathy.
Me? I have a 29-year-old son who's in a group home in Yorkville. We're in Sugar Grove, and he does Keeler for daytime.
Mike and Val.
We belong to Amanda Bolero, who will be hopefully in the not too distant future joining Ascilla, that will be staffed by AID. At the moment, we have shared custody with Amanda's mom, and Amanda has a couple of jobs that she works and bounces back and forth between the houses. She's 31.
Great. Hannah and Caleb.
Hi, I'm Caleb Bryant. This is my wife, Hannah. I'm the guardian of my sister, who lives in a group home in Elgin.
And also does day programming
Yeah.
in Elgin. Hi, I'm Hannah. We live in Chicago.
Great. Mary and Bob.
Hi, I'm Mary, and this is Bob, and this is our daughter, Maria. Hey, camera's over here.
I don't blame you. Don't look at it.
She is 32, and we live in Algonquin. Maria works for the Village of Carpentersville, doing data entry for the Public Works Department, and she's had that job for 10 years. We've been very blessed in that. And Maria's name was pulled from the puns shortly after she aged out of the school system. So again, we were very blessed there. And we use it for home-based services, but we are actively, but not as actively as we need to be, looking at opportunities. And we're really excited when Lori shares, the up and coming things happening in with AID. So we are on a couple of waiting lists. So we'll see what happens. Many days Maria says she's not ready for it, but we got to be ready at some point. So anything else?
No.
Yeah. So nice to meet all of you.
Thank you.
Son, that Maria processes my water bill, Mary.
We're in that department. Yeah.
All right, Barb.
She probably records if you have any work done at your house. She does a lot of their historical data entry.
Interesting.
The job developer was very good in explaining that, you know, she needed some data entry kind of things that didn't have hard deadlines. So she's done a lot of historical entry that now the guys use out in the trucks when they're working at different addresses.
How fascinating. Well, I guess I can't blame her after all.
And blame her for your expensive water bill, huh?
That's correct. Yes.
Barb.
Hi, I'm Barb Tracy. My son Adam is 36, and he's been going to the day program in Elgin AID for 12 years, 13 years, something like that. Just recently, he got placed with the JanAid program through AID, and he's very much enjoying that.
Good. Good. Kathy with the K.
I'm Kathy Simpson. My son Kevin's 31 and has been attending the day program at AID since he aged out of the school system. And June of last year, he moved into Acilla. So
And we're working through it, aren't we, Kathy?
we are. It's a process, but he loves it. He absolutely loves it.
He didn't the first time he looked at it, though, did he?
No, but now we can't get him home. He comes home, he wants to go back. So it's good. It's all good.
That's good. That's good. Matthew, do you like Matthew or Matt?
Either one. Matthew's fine. Matt,
Okay.
whatever. My name is Matt Hicks, and my son Rollins Hicks attends the day program and lives in a home with 3 other clients of AID. He's 34 years old.
He's a DJ.
Yeah, DJ Argers, everybody knows that.
Yep. I'm always like, Rollins, we've got to get you playing at some dinner dances or something. Jim, can you introduce yourself, Jim Roth? Maybe not. Okay, Jim, we know you're there. He's a guardian of someone that is supported by AID. So again, welcome everyone. Thanks for sharing. It's always nice to get a reminder because I've slept since the last time we've met, and I can't seem to hold on to all the pieces of information in my brain that I need to. So tonight, like I said, is an advisory one of our meetings. And so I will start out with got kind of 3 major things to ask for your opinion on. So hang on, it's some hard stuff. The first one is we're looking for input on the, oh, here comes somebody else, on the consumption of legal substances for adults that are of age, that are specifically mentioned in like the home and community-based settings rules, like alcohol. They do not specifically talk about marijuana because that's not legal in all states, right, where home and community-based settings are being implemented. But they do talk about alcohol and people that are of legal age, and what the residential area is interested in are steps that you all would recommend to take in order to assess risk desires to consume, storage of alcoholic beverages in homes, of people choosing that, what, consumption rules. We can't really we can't take it away from people, but we want to be able to make it safe for all people and be in compliance with the home and community-based settings regulation. So they're just looking for some input from you all as you think about that. And your loved one may not be interested in alcoholic beverages, but someone else in their that they live with might, right? So what are your thoughts on assessing the ability to safely consume alcohol, trying to gauge what level of use a person might want and or desire, and ways that you should store alcohol if it is in the home, right? So that it can't be necessarily accessed by people that it isn't theirs, right? And it's not in their plan or their consumption. So people that are over 21 are legally able to purchase and consume alcohol if they so desire. So thoughts?
This is applicable really well strictly to a SCILA. It wouldn't, yeah.
It's pretty much based on like the a residential setting, right?
Yeah, that's, I
What
should
people would
say
have in
residential.
their own home. You wouldn't be
Okay.
like, at day programs or anything, but yes, it would be about, in your home as a person who has a lease and a SCILA, is over 21. And might be, interested in that. What are some things that we should think about in order to comply with people's ability to make those decisions, but also ensure that we support them in safely consuming and or safely storing, right? So that all people at the SCILA cannot, break into the booze if they don't, or they shouldn't, right? Based on, people have medication things, people can have problems with managing substances, right? So just wondering what people's thoughts and inputs is around that subject.
I personally can't imagine wanting to drink alcohol. He does like Schlitz beer. He's never drank one. He just tells everybody he likes it. So he has purchased Schlitz beer when he's out with his dad. It goes in the refrigerator, never to be seen from again. He could care less.
Yeah.
But I can imagine, I guess for me, it's more an issue of it having access so that staff, because you don't really know if staff has a problem with alcohol. And if they are working in an environment where it's there, and we don't know that they have an issue, that I think is a safety concern. So I don't know. I mean, I had hoped we'd never have to cross that bridge, but I see how you would have to.
Yeah, and it's underneath the home and it's specifically mentioned in the home and community-based settings regulation. It's along with access to food, right? Access to food whenever you want it, not mandatory, like if you don't eat at 5, you don't get to eat, kind of things. As well as long as there is no indication in a person's like behavior plan or their personal plan that they have any reason for food restriction, right? Some people have some disorders that would cause them to eat more than is healthy, or eat things that aren't food, etc., right? And so there you can restrict some things there, but otherwise we're not supposed to restrict. And it's basically the same thing for alcohol, as long as a person is of age. But again, it's just like with I think it's the way to think about it is the same way as when we talked about sexuality earlier. You know, it's about assessing the person's ability, right, to make that decision and to make a decision about how much to consume and when, right? That could be, so, you know, I'm assuming that most of you all would be in favor of some type of assessment, right, of a person's ability to consume, you know, to make that decision to consume and to make decisions about how often and when. See,
Yeah.
Yes.
Does it go with, yeah, I mean, to what extent does it vary by functional level that a person has? In other words, I can imagine the iSilla down the street where it would be much more of an issue. At my son's 24/7 Scylla, you know, I don't expose David to alcohol in my house, even though I've got beer in my fridge right now. You know, my son is functionally a 4-year-old, a 5-year-old. And when my daughters were that age, I didn't give them a drink. So frankly, I don't want David exposed to it. And he's never expressed any interest in it. So, you know, so I would prefer an environment, at least in his Scylla, where that was the norm, I guess.
Yeah, and I don't think we can promise that, because if there are people at his home that do have the ability to assess that, they would have the right to that, have that in their home. But I think it has to do with, right, like we need to have some kind of assessment process, right, as to interest, ability to decide, and you know, the idea about, you know, like making a decision about what that would be. And I think this then that goes to then how is it also held, right, or stored, right, you know, so it wouldn't necessarily be in the shared refrigerator, you know, is it in a, you know, is it in a locked drawer, you know, or cupboard that is that person's alone, right? You know, because people also have snacks that they purchase themselves or other things, right? Or there might be sweets that one person wants, but another person is diabetic, right? You know, and they shouldn't necessarily have access to that. So I think it'd be kind of along the same lines of that, Jim, you know, as to how we might you know, assess. So what I heard you saying is like it needs to be assessed, right? The person's ability to choose, right? And supported in that. And then we need to have you know, that's in each person's plan, you know, that's in a Scylla, right? Their personal plan. And then there's some storage you know, requirement, right, that limits then the ability for other people that don't have it in their plan, right? And you don't want able to stumble upon it, right, if you will.
So Lori, what are does the ARC or other national agencies have assessment instruments? Like I know the state had worked up an assessment instrument on the, you know, what level of sex ed would be appropriate for a person. So I assume those instruments are out there, and you guys your executive team would be able to access them, right?
Yeah, I'm assuming there are. I have not looked, you know, at this. I just asked for questions from the executive leadership to bring to you guys, and assessment is one of the things that they put on here. So I'm assuming that we would review just like we do with anything, right, to see what exists and what might work best within AID.
The final comment, and then I'll shut up. I think the storage issue is huge. I know at my son's house, fridge raiding is a regular occurrence 24/7. And, you know, that's not even well controlled. And in my mind, it should be because, you know, my son is gaining weight, you know, because nobody will stop him from raiding the fridge. So the storage issue, I think, is a huge issue.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think it needs to be under lock and key, definitely. Kathy?
Does this also include like CBD oil and that kind of stuff?
I mean, it could in Illinois, as I said earlier, HCBS settings regulation does not specifically talk about marijuana, right? Or any of its products because it's not legal in all states. It is legal in Illinois though, right? I would assume that it could apply to that as well. And we do have a variety of people that use CBD and some other things like for some seizure control, some mood control, sleeping, other things. So, we already have some of that use, most designed for medicinal use, right? But obviously in Illinois, you can also, and we have not started driving people to the pot store at this point, but I mean, I guess technically speaking, I mean, that is a legal substance in Illinois that you need to just be, I think you have to, you can tell I haven't bought any, but I think you have to be 21 and to be eligible to buy that too. But I mean, I would think the same. I would think that if we are going to assess the use of things that you are legally of age,
Like a
for,
small
that are
bag,
legal
brown light.
in Illinois, you would, you would look at that, right? The whole 9 yards.
Yeah, $60 isn't going to buy a lot of alcohol or marijuana. So
No, it's not. But I do know that there are regularly when we used to have in-person dinner dances, which are hopefully on their way back, but it's usually at a hotel or and people do buy a drink, right? There are people that do enjoy having access to that. We just have it's never been like stated so explicitly in the home and community-based settings regulations. I saw somebody had a hand up. I think that was Hannah.
Yeah, just adding our perspective on this, and I apologize. Did you say how it stands now, if it's allowed or not allowed? I missed that in the beginning.
So I would not say that there is a stricture against it, but I would not say that it's actively supported.
Okay.
And so now, underneath the federal home and community-based settings regulations, just as there is, as Jim mentioned, the food, right? We can't keep people from we can't prevent you from eating whenever you want to. We can't unless there is something written into your plan that because of health or a disorder you have, that you couldn't do it. So and they specifically mention alcohol as one of those things, because many advocates who are consumers, right, who are persons with disabilities, and that are also they could be any person with a disability, right? It could be any disability. So it could be a person with a physical disability or a mental health diagnosis, but have often in places that are supported by providers not been allowed, right, to have something that they are legally of age and should be able to enjoy. I think it's a little more complex with the IDD population because of what Jim was talking about earlier in terms of assessing a person's ability to make that decision, and responsibly, purchase, consume, manage, all of that.
Okay, thank you. I apologize for missing the beginning. Our perspective, or my perspective, might be that it seems like a lot of additional responsibility to add on to the house manager's plates with not very much possible upside. Like, I think a lot of the participants, like I know Abby, like she would not be one of the people that would be able to participate in that. So for a relatively small, maybe not a big part of the population that AID is like directly supporting, would even be a candidate to like consume it or enjoy it. So the risk of having the substance and then the management of the safety of it doesn't seem worth that risk reward to me. Seems like just another thing to add on to, the plate of the, people providing the care, and they're already stretched thin based on our last conversation. So, and I would just be concerned if someone got it that was not able to have it and then overdid it and had an episode, then that's like that could escalate pretty quickly. And just from how do you manage the house and something like that? So if you had, my opinion would be just to put a hard no on it, because from a policy side, but just from a safety risk reward perspective.
And I understand and I hear that, and unfortunately we can't because it's a federal regulation and requirement underneath home and community-based settings regulation, which is the type of waiver that people receive DD services under. It's called a home and community-based settings Medicaid waiver, and in Illinois, the one that people with intellectual and developmentally disabled persons are under is adults with IDD Medicaid waiver. So as with many of these things, it does complicate very much jobs and decisions and responsibilities for people, but we also don't have a ton of choice in implementing them. So that's why we're looking for feedback on you all for ways to implement the proper supports or things that we should be thinking of in order to make sure that we're thinking of all avenues and meeting your expectations, right, as well as the federal government's expectations.
So this is a requirement. We have to allow it. So how do you comply with the law within the confines? Okay,
yeah. I'm sorry. I probably didn't explain that very well. I'm sorry.
Okay, so we're required to allow it, but how do you allow it safely within the programming? Got it.
Yeah. Is there a middle way, Lori, that are we required to inform people that they have this right? In other words, are we going to ask Kathy to bring the case of Schlitz to my son's house and say, hey, you guys now have a right to this. Are you interested or not? In other words, if it's never brought up, sort of a don't ask, don't tell scenario, would that be one way of moving toward sort of the hard no that I lean toward and that Hannah leans toward as well? I don't know.
Yeah, oftentimes it is not, but I need to look at the regulation and see, because oftentimes that is the same as keeping people from their allowed right because they didn't know it was a right in the first place. But I don't know that. Again, I think it'll be around like finding that good assessment tool that really can assist with figuring out people's concept and understanding, if they understand what alcohol is and what it does, and that it impairs, your functioning and other pieces, right? Or it does if you, have more than maybe one drink, but I will look, I will put that down, Jim, as to check into, because I did not, I will admit, look at the language that was in the HCBS regulation to see if it specifically spells out whether or not people are to be forwardly informed of their rights, right? I'll look at that.
Mary, you were going to say something.
Well, also on that avenue of trying to find a middle ground, is there a way that it could be allowed on a certain day, like a happy hour, like a Friday afternoon happy hour? And that doesn't say that everybody has to drink, but and I think that would be a good rule too. If you're going to have an activity, you definitely have to have non-alcoholic options and food as well. But even in the nursing homes, I I'm not familiar with too many nursing homes here, but the one my parents were used in Minnesota, every Friday at their coffee time in the afternoon, you know, they had to provide their own alcohol, and it was kept safe in us, you know, in somewhere in the nurses station.
Yeah.
But so that kind of depends on how it is written up in the rules.
Right. Right. No, I like that idea. We'll definitely look at that. Barb?
Yeah, my question would be, I would really want to see this assessment, you know, to look at it to see what it's looking for in my son to decide whether or not he could have alcohol. Because, I mean, yes, he's had it on occasion, but I don't really think if he was assessed that he would be one of the ones that would be able to have it.
Yeah.
Then I forget what my second point was.
Well, when you think of it, we'll come back to you.
Okay.
Anybody?
Yeah,
else?
my
Sue, I'll let Sue go and then I'll come back to you, Kathy Simpson.
real quick, yeah, and in terms of the assessment, and you mentioned that, you know, things like medication, but living in something like a Scylla, it seems to me part of the consideration has to be not just my son's medication, but everybody else's medication. And like, you know, like someone had said, great, my son's medication, and there's no contraindication, but for his roommates, yes, there is, you know, and then it gets really, you know, across the board kind of thing. So that, and also seems like there would need to be some kind of training of DSPs as far as, I'm not sure what, you know, can they limit? I mean, I'm not a drinker. Can a bartender limit out in a public restaurant how much somebody can drink? So would that be considered, you know, infringing on their rights? Or,
right.
You know, and if somebody for some reason does have a reaction to whatever,
right,
then you got a whole nother kettle of fish.
Right.
So
No, I like that. Training is a good point. Very much. We'll go to Kathy Simpson and then Candace.
Is it possible for the house to elect to not have alcohol? Can they, you know, like have a discussion and decide whether it's appropriate or inappropriate for their house?
I think they potentially could. We'll definitely look at the that's another thing to look at, like the rule, and see you know, if that is something that could work. But usually they, you know, they encourage, right, you know, group decisions, right, of people that are living together. So that's a good idea. And
if they get the guardians involved, I'll vote no.
All right, Candace.
My question was marijuana and medical marijuana. Is that administered currently in the homes?
We do have people that are on some versions of CBD oil. It's not the THC, right? It's the CBD because there was early on some positive effect on people with seizure disorder that not are well managed. We also have some folks that use it to behaviorally moderate, right? Like if they get anxious or upset, but we don't have anyone that I'm aware of that, like, you know, smokes marijuana, but it's like usually the oil and the some of you know, the gummies for you know, and we might have people, I know that sometimes people use it for sleep assistance, right? And again, it's sometimes the THC and sometimes the CBD, as far as I understand it, it depends upon the person and what works for them. But the ones that I am personally aware of that we have had people involved with are the oil for and then for like behavior modulation, like calming, you know, helping to calm, when people become agitated. I'm not, yes, Kathy Hoyden.
Yeah, totally. I like the idea of having each house decide. It's not like you're gonna bring all this stuff in and say, hey, guys, here's what wine is, here's beer. How about cigarettes? Are we gonna, bring that in too? It's like, no, what they don't know, they're not gonna miss. And in my kid's case, he totally can't have any of that stuff or his meds are gonna.
All right.
But yeah, I like the idea of let each house, let the guardians know, because they're guardians for a reason, and go from there.
Lori?
Yes, Bob.
Yeah, this is a federal regulation, correct?
Yeah.
And so all states have to comply with it, correct?
Yep.
Do we have any sort of networking,
Mhm.
with other states or even
Yeah.
within organizations within the state of Illinois? Clearbrook comes to mind. I mean, what's everybody else kind of doing to, let's not reinvent the wheel if we don't have to, but
Right.
I just don't know what sort of relationship there is.
Yeah.
It's not like it's competition. I mean, it's
Right. No, we do have, we're part of trade association. We have peers all over the state that we talk to. Excuse me. And we also do have, national connections. So that's a good, point.
Okay.
A really good point.
Why couldn't we ask the doctor who is treating each and every one of these, clients have a doctor? Why couldn't we get something from the doctor, whether or not the doctor thought that this person could have a cocktail, say on a Friday afternoon happy hour, or no, that wouldn't be at all appropriate, and have that on record.
Okay.
Put the onus on the doctor.
Some, I think some doctors, I don't know if they're still the same, but like when I was young and when my grandfather's doctor, he would have blackout spells and we kept trying to get him to like stop signing the driver's license agreement, and the doctor wouldn't stop doing it because he wouldn't stand up to my grandfather, even though he was like blacking out, and getting dizzy, and it was very dangerous, and we had to, finally corner him ourselves. So I think some doctors would be honest, but some doctors might feel some kind of pressure one way or the other as well. But I think that's a good idea, particularly around making sure that there's no medical reason, right? And any contraindications of their medicines, because while we are trained on their medicines and we have nurses, right, that understand these things, it would be best to have it from the prescriber, right, of that medication, of so whether that would be harmful at all.
And then there's the issue of actually following doctor's orders, and back on trusting staff to follow the doctor's orders. If you say you can't have those things, and not tempt staff to say, oh, what would happen if this person had some, and let's experiment. My guy's not going to be able to say so-and-so gave me his stuff.
Yeah.
And then let's look at the disastrous consequences of that happening. Too scary.
It is scary.
Or I have a question, Lori. So I understand that the agency can't unilaterally disallow. Can parents unilaterally restrict within could I unilaterally restrict within my son's plan? Or does that have to go through the ethics committee? Would there have to be an assessment? Like where do the rights of guardians come into something like this?
Yeah, and I would have to look into it, but I think it would probably have to go in front of the Human Rights Committee, right?
That's the committee I was thinking of. Yeah.
And go through. But again, this is this is very similar to the sexuality discussion, right? And the pieces there, and people would wish to unilaterally do that, and we're not allowed to do that either. But I will check I'll have that under my list of things to check within the regulation itself, right? So I've got about 5 things, right, within that to check, what would be allowed or not allowed, within the regulation, and then lots of great ideas for assessment, storage, doctor's permission, training, et cetera, right? So, and talking to our peers and others. So don't freak out. We're not doing anything tomorrow. We're not bringing in the mini bar tomorrow, Friday afternoon, for the happy hour, unless it's here in my office, and then you can all come and join me. But because I might need a drink every once in a while as well. Anything else that anybody wants to say about this before I go on to my next subject?
Real quick, Lori, this is going to be kind of a dumb question, but when there are gatherings at AID, when there are parties at AID, is that something that will come up as well?
So, all I can say is that before COVID, when we had client dinner dances, we did have clients that most people would get as much pop as they could drink, right? But we did have some clients that purchased alcoholic beverages, and I don't know because like the last one I was at was like in 2019, and I have just been here not that long. I don't know if that was in their plan, right? I don't know what the assessment, it wasn't a lot of people. It was like a couple people, at dinner dance. And so I don't know what that is, but if we assess and say people can't, then people couldn't, whatever setting that was, right? It wouldn't matter if it was an event or anything else, right? But we just have to ensure that and usually it was staff that was not usually, it was staff that assisted people and or made sure that people weren't buying 12 drinks, right?
Lori, the way I heard Sue's question was it was about on-site venues, not off-site. In other words, when AID has a Valentine's pizza party, is it now going to be pizza and beer?
Oh, I don't think so. I'm not planning on starting a bar here. No, nor a marijuana dispensary either. Neither one.
Even if clients said, "Hey, we'd like to have beer at the AID ETC party."
I think not during the day. I mean, like we're well able to party with soda, right? Soda is makes them very punch drunk most of the time because people are loving guzzling the soda, that sugar high.
Well, I just think that's a good clarification, sort of at an offsite venue and on AID premises. So anyway,
I didn't process it that way. So thank you. Thanks, Simpson.
Yeah, I think we have to keep in mind that there's a wide spectrum of disabilities here, and there are a lot of clients of AID who are perfectly capable of having a cocktail or a beer and have the wherewithal to manage that. They may overindulge and somebody needs to reel them in, but not every, Kevin functions like 2 to 5 year olds. So his Schlitz beer is just because he's seen people with beer, and I don't know how he ever got on Schlitz, but
it's probably in a movie or a video game or something.
It's got very low standards, Kathy.
He picked it up somewhere. Okay, he picked it up somewhere and rolled with it. But I think there are a lot of clients who are perfectly capable of having a cocktail or two and have the wherewithal to order it themselves. And so it's hard to put it all in perspective when, I'm sitting in a chair with a kid who really shouldn't have alcohol. I just can't even, I don't even want to go there. But when he's 50 years old, he may be able to do it. I don't know. I have no idea. He picks up on a lot of stuff. So.
Yeah. And just because we have to ask these questions and think about these things, we are not becoming alcohol or marijuana pushers at AID, right? So we're not gonna lead people around to try all of the things that they could potentially become addicted to, and like Kathy mentioned, cigarettes, et cetera, right? So this is not what we're not what we're here for, but just trying to balance that line of making sure that people with disabilities have the same rights as persons without disabilities, and then how do you safely implement those rights, right, in order to assist people that need assistance with making those decisions or assessing that option. All right, so can I go on to our next topic?
Yep.
We have been reviewing ways to increase people's thoughts about employment and exploration of what they might be interested in doing, their vocational interest and goals. And we've had some suggestions that there might be parents or guardians or friends that would be interested in volunteering to work with or talk with or explore with some clients vocational interests and goals, right? And wondering what you guys thought about that, and if that's anything that you would be interested in participating in, or know of people that might be. I'm being kind of nebulous about it, but it'd be more kind of a one-on-one kind of thing with, and there would there has to be training, and there has to be some like we have to check people's criminal background and stuff like that before you can work with a person with a disability, technically. But it would be, in a setting like one of our day programs, et cetera. But so there would, always be fully trained staff around. But the idea is kind of like, is there an individual who might have some vocational interest, might have some craft or some skill, right, that they themselves would like to talk to a client about, right, and assess or see if they might be interested in learning that skill or craft, right, or assisting in with the idea of having some curriculum. There are curriculums that are about introducing the idea of work and or what you might be interested in, and trying to kind of drill down to what people are more interested in and less interested in, right? And would anyone be, is that something that seems like something that would be a potential volunteer opportunity for people? Are there parents or guardians that might be interested in that, and just in general, what do you think about that idea?
I have a very dear friend who lives in Minnesota, and she does this for a living. She does job coaching and tries to find vocations for individuals with disabilities, and she is paid by the state of Minnesota to do that. And so she does a lot of onboarding. When a client attends a day program, they do an assessment to see if they're interested in the job, and then they have job coaches that they assign to them and get them going.
Right. And we have some of that, at AID. I think part of it is like, so think to some of the Keeler clients, even as to a way to make some money, but maybe not going to be a full-time job somewhere, right? So it's like a craft or a skill that you might, you might make a birdhouse. You might, be interested in weaving, I don't know, you know, whatever that is, but like, how do we introduce that to people, if we don't have any staff that know how to weave or are carpenters, right? You know, so I think it's as much as that, because the more formal stuff we have, but sometimes even people will say that they're not interested in working, and it's more about they're not aware of some of the things that they could do, right? That like they don't want to do things that they think of as a job, right? You know, like maybe even what their parent does, I don't know, but you know, I mean, like you know, because people have oftentimes been put in slots instead of the job developed for them. And so we work on that a lot, but sometimes just talking with people and going through options and looking at building you know, interest in even like I said, in crafts or you know, trades or you know, making something that could then perhaps be sold. And that's not gonna, that won't make you the amount of money that gets your job coaching paid for, right? Because you have to be able to make minimum wage and all that kind of stuff, right? But it still is dignity and learning, you know, so it's like trying to balance what we have and are able to give to people, and like even some more greater, maybe one-on-one kind of you know, interactions that might, you know, find out from somebody after you spent 10 hours with them, you know, that they're a great, I'm going to use Matt's son, DJ, right? You know, and they just need some help, like setting up the gigs, right? Or maybe are not great interpersonally in order to like sell their products, but can make a product, you know what I'm saying? So it's like trying to get a little bit deeper than that. It's not trying to offset our jobs that we're doing on, you know, that we are doing and getting paid for by the state, right? But like trying to even tempt people to think about something that they maybe have never thought that they could do, you know, or realize that that was a job, or that was something, a way that they could spend their time that they might enjoy. Does that make sense?
Yeah, Lori, here's the first thought that comes to my mind. Sue and I were in one of David's planning meetings a few months ago, and we were told about the new rotation at the Elgin Center. And we asked, because Sue knows a whole lot about sort of early childhood education, that's her career, asked about the task boxes. What was the purpose of the task boxes? Were they meant to teach pre-vocational skills? And the answer was no. Basically, it's busy work. Yeah. So here's my thought. My son David, in the last few years, has become really interested in tools. Now, he'll often get work in the screwdriver backwards, but he's really interested in that. And I'm not terribly handy at working with tools. But if there was someone who could, and David loves bicycles, if, you know, there was someone who could, you know, pick up a bunch of broken bicycles that are going out at trash pickup day, bring them down to the workshop, and there's a small group of clients that somebody is going to teach them, here's how you take a bicycle apart. That's the kind of thing that I think would be really helpful to some of our guys. So that's sort of the image that came in my mind when you were talking.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a really good one, and better one than I could make up out of my brain, but because it has a real application behind it. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about. You know, I mean, like anything like that, right? You know, that is a skill that, you know, just because you're a job coach doesn't necessarily mean you know how to take apart a bicycle and put it back together, right? You know, you know, is you know, does that seem like something that, like, if we figure out, because the challenge that we that we have is that we need to be, you know, real specific about what you're looking for in a volunteer, right? You know, from these things, so that people know what they're getting into, right? You know, because nobody just is going to answer a general volunteer thing you know, you need to ask for some of those specific skills, like, you know, are you a bicycle repairman, you know, or do you love bicycles and, you know, interested in teaching, you know, I mean, whatever, is how you advertise for it too, as well, right? Yeah, no, I love that. I like the bicycle idea. That's great.
So two things
Mhm.
pop into my head, and like Barb, I hope I don't forget both of them. Number one, an experience that we have had with our son, and maybe not other people, but one thing is that he will sometimes be resistant to something to begin with, and he needs to try it a few times. He needs to be, you know, before, and it would be great if there was some, I don't know how to say this, with some latitude for that, to say, all right, you've done it 3 or 4 times, then you still don't really want to do it. Okay, then we know that that's not for you, but you've done it 3 times and you're coming back to it. So, but then after the 3rd or 4th time, if he doesn't like it, please don't write him off. Let's see if there's something else.
Right.
The other thing that is, again, kind of piggybacking on what Jim talked about. Now, obviously, we have talked about this a lot, quite frankly. There are some woodworking projects that he does with David that people love. And I've talked with other parents who have had that experience in the past as well. And some of their, there we go. Yep.
Every fall, David and I make several of these wooden stars. We put Christmas lights on them and give them to friends and family. And David loves using the tools to drill holes and, you know, put the screws together. So that kind of, anyway, go ahead, Sue.
Well, so then my question would be, what, and I know this is a jump beyond. Do we have an outlet? Would we consider a stall at State Street Market or the Elgin Farmers Market, or I don't know what else is in Elgin? Is it a possibility to open that up? And you're right. Some people, my son, there's no point in a lot of public. I'd love for him to be in the public, but he's nonverbal. So, you know, but is there a way then to allow them to sell at these and have people who are interested in selling and, you know, that sort of thing that would give them a market, give them a full circle kind of, you make it, you take it here, you're going to sell it, and actually see. That's just, I know that's like the step beyond, but
no, I think that's right, you know, and part of that, like we used to, pre-COVID, we used to have twice a year at Keeler, we had like a craft fair, right? You know, that we advertised to the public and that people came to and they sold their items and the money went into each room, right? They created those and then they would, you know, choose a pizza party or do something with that money, right? They came in from the craft fair, you know, and now, you know, now that, you know, things are more normal, right? Again, you know, in terms of not having to be secluded in our own little rooms anymore, you know, we're working on, you know, bringing those things back, but we have a hard time with people who are trained to be like educational professionals, and people that work with people with disabilities don't necessarily have like the craft ideas, right? Or like can figure out what it is that can we help people with, right? In order to support those. Thank you, Hannah and Caleb. They have another meeting at 8, but they're going to listen to the recorded session to learn more about the rest of the stuff we talked about.
No, Lori, if we're interested in the craft woodwork thing, there's a workshop, I think in Wheaton, called the Doodlebug Workshop that began a couple of years ago. It was a family with a disabled adult child, and when he exited, he was really into woodwork. So they began their own small day program. I think it's grown. That would be worth at least connecting with them and saying, what are some things that we could do at our workshops without having, you know, big table saws in there where people cut their hand off.
Right. That would be great. And actually, I hope Nancy doesn't mind me saying, but Nancy chatted to me that she has a son that worked at Toys R Us putting bikes together, and she thought he would be interested in sharing his skills. So we might have a
cool
here already.
didn't I remember going to different AID auctions that when on the outside, before you went into the auction, there was some handmade mittens, scarves, hats, little baskets with goodies that someone handmade. I don't know who made them, but
Yeah.
they were for sale.
Yeah.
And they were being scarfed up pretty quickly as we walked in anyway. But I just thought, I know there's the auction once a year.
Yeah.
And I would think people might be interested in different things there.
Right. And the other thing that we do is that we try to do the little AID themed Christmas gift, right, that you can buy, every year. And, clients have put that together or made the ornaments or the other things that are in that, gift, right, as part of the Christmas gift. And they're always great gifts to give for like teacher gifts or, your post person or, some of those folks that, you don't want to just give another gift card to, but that you'd like to give a little something to. Kathy?
I think that they used to make these snowmen, and I think that they had a couple staff members who were really, really creative.
Yeah, I'm trying to look. I was looking around because I thought I had one in here, but oh yeah, I do.
Yeah, and I think that that person has left. So very creative, and she had them making all kinds of cool things. But I bought 20 of those, and everybody got them in my family's for Christmas one year. Just because I think they were $5 or $7, and they were cute.
Yep.
And I donated a basket of buttons because they used the buttons on the snowmen or whatever. But they were really cute. But it was one person who headlined that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, is like, again, just like with the DSPs, like we ask people to be, unicorns, like the jack of all trades, right? Like know how to write a behavior plan and, work with people with disabilities and woodwork, but that's why I think, the idea of asking about, is that, a volunteer thing that people would be interested in? Because one of the other things that I'd like to move towards too is that we began hot lunch program again, right? And so clients are working in the preparation of the hot lunch and then, getting paid minimum wage by the hour, for doing that. And it's rotating through, giving people the chance to try it that are interested in trying and working on it. And like, I'm sure there are people that cooking is their thing, right? So maybe they make the best muffins in the world or, whatever, right? Dog treats, whatever it is that people are interested in. It's just like trying to drill down to what that is, right? So, we have the commercial kitchen in Elgin, we are, we got a really nice kitchen in our West Chicago Main Street Lofts, which is starting to pull people off the waiting list and hopefully have people moving in by May 1st. So, woo-woo.
Lori, I wonder have we ever sort of cataloged what these skill sets and interests of parents, volunteers are? Here's an analogy. Years ago at my college, we did an inventory of all the staff, faculty and staff, about what weird things have you done? Oh, this person rides a motorcycle. That person walked on the Great Wall of China. This person speaks Romanian. And so you could call someone up and say, hey, can you come into my class for 10 minutes and talk about, speaking Romanian, because we're going to be talking about, East European history. And it was this marvelous database of resources. So I would say we begin by, inventorying what interests and might our group and our volunteers have.
That's a great idea. And then, just like with the kind of changing sections that you can go to at, at CDS in Elgin, there are
exactly
different classes you can go to try and see, what would, and then, what kind of pops out and interests somebody when somebody engages with that, right? Julie?
Card making is not in my skill set, so no card making here.
Okay.
When are you looking for this to occur?
I
Is
think I think we were just asking in general, would parents be interested? Do they think that's a good idea? You know, I mean, what would happen? And so I'm going to go back to Courtney Littlejohn, our Vice President of Equity and Inclusion, that's in charge of all our employment and day programming, right? And give her all these wonderful suggestions and input, right? And so we can start to figure out how we could, integrate it. So Julie, are you wanting to know, like, specifically, like, during the week, during the weekend, in the evening?
Yeah, well, and actually I'm thinking of, and I know we're talking about tangible items. I'm thinking of more like yoga classes and learning how to use, like, just different things that don't really involve like any technical, like maybe exercise equipment, like having like a stages like in the Keeler gym to have like what people can do something. Because yes, I think everybody needs to find meaning in whatever it is, but I feel like specifically doing something is feeling not only physically good, but also feeling a sense of accomplishment. And I mean, I think that's a possibility.
No, I think that's a great idea too. I think that's a really good idea. We have, I know in our psychosocial rehab that we do daily with folks on the mental health side, I was there the other day and they were doing their chair yoga. I don't know, how much that's written into CDS, but that's a great suggestion as well. And as we continue, especially with Keeler, to look for a real a property for them that will actually have spaces that we can do much more things with. I think that is something that we can continue to move towards. I think it's a great idea. And, one of the things that I remember when I was, first here and went to my first dinner dances was how excited people were about being able to dress up and go to a dance. And I said, then why don't we do this every month, right? Like, why? I mean, you don't have to eat every time, right? But like, why don't we have a dance every month? So we are working towards that finally. So I'm excited about that and looking at, first Friday, second Friday, whatever would be dance night, right? And everybody would be, I'm like, we have all these big spaces that we own at AID. There's no reason why we can't do that. And we'll have to have Rollins come to DJ. We have a guy that works for us that likes to DJ, but we can
maybe they can partner,
right? Get Rollins on board and get that going.
And get Mike out in the warehouse, do his Elvis.
There we go.
Do they have any sports? Is there any organized sports like basketball?
I mean, we have a lot of people that are involved in, Special Olympics, right? In all different kinds of
like in
teams,
community, different, like, say a team from Aurora, a team from Wheaton, a team from where. It's just, I happened to go see the movie Champions.
How was it?
It was awesome.
I liked it. I mean, there were parts they didn't have to put in, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But as far as the kids were concerned, I was overwhelmed. It was great. And the fact that those people could act. I have a Down syndrome nephew that has been in plays and stuff.
Yeah.
He just shines. But I just wondered if that's another avenue, if you had a coach, a retired coach, or even somebody in high school that would think that'd be fun to coach a bunch of kids. It was boys and girls on the team,
So you made me think, so not only sports, but theater and music too, right? Because people like to sing, play instruments, dance, act,
it's a
whatever.
social thing.
Yeah.
It's social, but it's a team kind of idea.
Yeah. I like it. All right.
Lori,
yes.
real quick. I'm here to be the PETA of the group. I think these are such great ideas. I really would like to push that community piece that says we take it out. That way, our families are exposed to the community the way they should be. And the community is exposed to them and to AID. And then when we say AID is doing this or that, they go, oh, I remember seeing them somewhere. I remember they were selling these things.
Right.
Number two, I have no idea if it would work, and it might not fly. We've got these kitchens. Have we ever thought about the possibility of some sort of coffee cart services to the other companies right around AID?
Good idea. That's a
Just
good idea.
and there's ways to do it. They're doing it in middle schools and high schools and stuff like that.
That's a good idea. We talk talk about that every time I go to Springfield, because at the Capitol there is no where to get coffee, that's decent. And so we talk every time. We're like, man, we should have a coffee cart here these are really good ideas, Nancy. We totally agree. So that's we are moving towards more and more with our food, right? Like it's started slowly and continues to add on. We have big hopes and dreams for our food program, including like being able to deliver meals or meal kits or to Scillas, right, to take something off of the plate, no pun intended, of the DSPs, et cetera. So we have lots and lots of plans, and we just are like slowly marching our way there. And trying to work towards it. But I think, if we work towards some people that might be able to, help in a volunteer capacity too, I think that expands our ability to not, just be like, oh man, we can't hire, we've been trying to hire somebody, another cook teacher, whatever it is, and this would help. So I really love the ideas, and I'm gonna talk to Courtney. Is going to be very excited when I give her all this stuff. So I think that is really good, and we are winding down our time. So I want to be cognizant of the time and give you guys a couple quick updates. Those were the two biggest things, and the third thing is advocacy. But before I talk about the advocacy, I want to go back to Main Street Lofts, because Nancy was asking me about where we're at with Main Street Lofts. So believe it or not, all of the electrical items are installed at Main Street Lofts. Yay!
Cool.
So they're doing final, like all the punch list stuff, like when I went and looked, there's louvered doors that are in front of the furnace, and some of the louvers are and I'm like, oh, that all needs fixed, stuff like that, putting in the grab bars and, all the final pieces, all the switch plates and all that kind of stuff. They were just finishing up, putting in closing up the space beside the elevator where you get the elevator in, the pieces into the elevator. So we are actively pulling people and processing them off of the 3 different waiting lists for the units there. The Housing Authority of Champaign County has been processing people off the waiting list in order, sending them the full application for those units that have Housing Authority of Champaign County vouchers or rental subsidies. Then after all the information is in there, they'll come to AID to confirm that the person actually needs ongoing services and supports, because if you remember, West Chicago Main Street Lofts is a permanent supportive housing project. So it's affordable for people that need ongoing services and supports to live in the community. And that can mean whatever, right? It can be whatever disability you have. You might be a veteran, you might, be at risk of homelessness. You just have to have a need for ongoing support. So the Housing Authority has no way to assess that. So AID will assess that and then start getting people, hopefully attached to units. And then we are also processing statewide referral network, or SRN units. And we also have Section 811 units, and those are waiting lists that are managed at the state, and they send us the referrals. And so we have entity, MCM group that is processing those referrals for us. Our goal is April 15th, but in my head it's May 1st because it's never what you think it's going to be for hopefully move in and lease signing, and then we will do a ribbon cutting of some kind and invite everybody to come. Oh, yes, Nancy, that's great. Nancy said, if my son just received an application, is that a good indicator? Yes, that is. Oh, that's great. That's really great, Nancy. Yes, if you've got a application, you're gonna get one of the units unless something explodes. So that sounds positive. Yay, Nancy.
How many units are there?
Yeah.
24.
Okay.
There's 24 units. 12 of them are the Housing Authority of Champaign County voucher units. And 5 are 811 and 7 are SRN. So they all have rental subsidies on them of some kind. So it'll be affordable to people. There are 3 2-bedrooms and 21 1-bedrooms. So, and I just met today the folks from PNC Bank, who are the syndicators for our tax credits for our tax credit building in Elgin at the property. They flew in from Ohio to look at the 16 acres of woods that were there. But they also go around and look at comparable buildings, and look at the community and all that kind of stuff. And they are the people that actually give us the money, take the credits and sell those. So they're the syndicators on that. So we are continuing to move towards financial closing with the Illinois Housing Development Authority for Wildwood Commons. Don't cry, Nancy.
Oh,
Or if you do cry, cry
It's good.
happy tears, right?
happy. Oh, yes, yes. Totally happy tears.
Yeah. Yeah, no, if he's got a application, like they're not just coming out to anybody. They're people that are at the top of the waiting list. So you got it.
Fantastic.
But Wildwood Commons is the 24-unit permanent supportive housing building, very similar to the building in West Chicago. And Wildwood Trace is the 50-unit low-income housing tax credit property. We are going to be celebrating on the 13th of April. Congressman Krishnamurthy, who was able to help us procure the promise of $3 million towards the community mental health center and pharmacy and employment services and stuff that is on the property as well. So very exciting moving forward and very positive. And then we're working towards a project here in Aurora as well, a supportive housing project. We're actually looking at a property that is an old school and looking at doing a rehab of it with maybe adding on a second wing, because there's some more space so that we can get, I hope, 20 units there of supportive housing. And we would start with the $3 million that we have promised from Congressman Foster's office. And then we would apply this year for funding from the Illinois Housing Development Authority's permanent supportive housing application round. So we keep rolling and keep trying to get these things, there's more money out at this time because of ARPA, right? The funds. And so you gotta keep going after those funds because they'll be gone soon. And then it'll be back to really hard to get, money. I mean, it's so hard to get money, but it'll be even harder to get money again. So we're gonna keep, kind of pounding away at those things as well. So those are kind of the housing things. Our property that we were looking at to purchase for Keeler and crisis service programs and all those things has fallen through. That was on Butterfield Road. The pipe fitters have decided that they're gonna tear down that building and yeah, and sell the land. I don't know why, because it was like 2 days after we came to the final agreement between the two lawyers about the contract language. So I don't know what's going on there. It was really bizarre and weird. And now all of a sudden the city wants that deal to happen, that didn't want it to happen before. So we'll see if they were able to talk the pipe fitters into anything, but I have to call the economic development gentleman from Aurora, because he called me today. So I don't know if he's come up with anything or not. We have looked at another property that we are considering as well, and we continue to look at that at properties that make sense because we are determined that we're going to get Keeler into a spot where they deserve to be served, as well as the crisis services have expanded they about tripled their staff. And we just applied for, a living room model as well, which I have all expectation of receiving the grant, because Christy Plasky writes a good grant and our service people do good services. So so we'll see, but we continue to move towards that. So that's exciting, but these real estate things are, we're trying to get a bargain, which means it's not going to be a perfect, building, because we don't have $12 million, but, we do have, we have some money to work with. So we are, continuing to pound away at that. And then finally, with the advocacy piece for the hours cut, et cetera. I'm trying to think, I can't remember the dates, and the stuff is in front of me here somewhere, but I'm not gonna look for it. But the state said that they were not, they were gonna pause the implementation of the hours cut through the end of March 31st first. Then they have that extended that through the end of June. The issue now is to fix whatever the underlying problem is, right? And who's going to be involved in that. So, my thoughts are is that we're working on a advocacy one-pager, right, to get out to you all as parents and guardians to talk to your legislator or to send to your legislator. And it's probably going to be headlined "Fix It," right, with a big exclamation point. And then, ask for 3 or 4 things to be fixed, because many legislators think that it has been fixed because it's put on pause, right? And they don't realize that that just extends the time to fix whatever the issue is, right? So the first thing is probably going to be, and it's going to be written better than this. These are like raw thoughts today, but it's to clarify that pause or that extension, because the way that we interpreted that was that we were going to get paid for December of 22's hours, right? With January's rate, right? Which was the higher rate per hour. We believe that we are getting a higher rate per hour, but we are not getting the hours. And this week, the Division of Developmental Disabilities said there would be no retroactive payments. So I don't know what that means, right? So it's going to be, clarify what the pause means, right? What kind of money is going to keep coming into the system? Then what is your plan to resolve the underlying issue, right? then how are parents, guardians, consumers, providers involved in that plan, right? Because they should be talking to all of us in order to ensure that they're thinking about every aspect and understand what any choice that they make means, right, to the people that are most affected by it. And the fourth thing is kind of technical, but it's basically give providers all of the data about what you are going to pay us, because we don't know any of it. We know about half of it now, and half of it is based on incorrect data. So it's very difficult to do any kind of planning. You know, we have not, you'll remember we did a raise in July of 2022 for all AID staff, and that was based on increased rates from behavioral health. We've been waiting till January for the information about increased rates for DDD in order to do another raise. It's very difficult to make the decision, although we are moving towards it, to do some very significant pay increases across the board if you don't know how much money you're going to be getting through the end of this fiscal year, nor do you know what that's going to look like on July 1st moving forward, right? This obviously has implications for the current budget preparation for next year, right? Because if they don't have a correct number in the budget now, even if you add $1.50 per hour, you're still behind what you haven't fixed now, right? Does that make sense? So, so I think that that is going to be the gist of the ask, and the thing that we wanted to be able to do was to be able to provide folks like you guys, when you go to your legislator and they go, oh no, it's fixed, you can go, no, it's not, it's paused, right? It is paused for a short time so you can fix it. What are you doing to fix it, right? We wanted to make sure that you were, armed with simple, but because legislators aren't going to listen longer than about 5 minutes, right? 10 minutes, simple things to tell them, as well as, the message that you can bring about what it means to your family, right? And Kathy Hoyda, the examples you were using earlier are exactly the things, right, that prove that, how much.
Sorry to interrupt. I have a new state rep and a state senator due to redistricting and the elections. So I've been feeding them info from, it's not just me, but I send it to them. And then I decided I'd pull in, I figured out the two that are involved where Matthew lives. And I stumbled into one guy's office just unannounced, and he hadn't even said it. He was mopping and vacuuming. That's how new he is. And I got 40 minutes with him. So he got an earful. And then Senator Holmes is my new senator.
Mm-hmm.
Their office contacted me, and Matthew and I are going over on April 6th for a half-hour meeting. So I'm going to hit her with, here's what's going on. So if you can get that sheet ready, although I do have plenty of ammo from DDD and from Ed McManus and how he sums things up. So, right. And then I let him know that it's not just me. I'm speaking for a lot. I know there's some families that don't care, but for the most part, I'm speaking up for a lot of people, and they're going to keep hearing from me.
Yeah, and the ARC of Illinois should be coming out. They're going to come out with a way to email blast, right? Kind of like they did for during the veto session, right, when they were trying to get some supplemental money put in. We're all trying to get, we've been waiting, like we were getting ready to put some out, and then they came out with the March 31st. Then we were going to put some out. They came out with the June. And then, we were like, okay, they're working towards it, but yet we haven't heard of any plan. And then I heard this, language that they're using, that they're not going to retroactively pay anybody. I'm like, what does that mean? Then that means nothing when you say you're not you're pausing the implementation if you don't actually pay us for the hours, right? You know, that's just pausing it in words and not in deed, right? So anyway, we'll see what happens, but we are working on a document. If you guys are part of iPad Unite, you know, they did a really nice letter that went to all legislators where they broke down their entire membership by zip code, which I thought was fabulous. So everybody can see how, you know, all these people in their district, right, that are signed on to this letter. So it's very good, you know, and this really ties back to, you know, the idea, if you're going to be able to close Choate to DD consumers, right? Where are they going, right? Because nobody in the community can trust, because, you know, I'm sorry, but I don't know what business in the world can run their business without knowing how much you're going to get paid. You know, I mean, like, it's just, you know, I mean, that you would not expect anybody to do that, but they do that to not-for-profits because they know we're not going to turn off the lights and walk away tomorrow because we have a mission to do this, right? You know, we're going to fight and scrap until the end, but, you know, like, people have been going out of business, and they will continue to do that, you know, if they don't get this stuff taken care of. So
Lori, I think it's also important as we are able to keep hammering the division. I was on a division webinar this morning where I raised this issue because they had kind of bypassed it. Apparently, the state's plan is that they're bringing in a third party that's going to look over the whole rate calculator and see how it aligns with their priorities. But the state officials on the call were pretty defensive, so they know they've you know, they're in a tough situation. So I think continuing to hammer them is important as well. And so
yeah,
for what
I
it's
agree.
worth.
And I would say there seems to be a big chip about this at the state, right? You know, I mean, like the chip on people, you know, like there seems to be an attitude like, hey, you guys have gotten a bunch of money. What are you complaining about? And it's a very fundamental misunderstanding of how the system is truly funded and truly works. So you know, for example, you know, AID looked at our hours in 2022, and 62% of the DSP hours that we paid were paid at the regular wage rate. 38% were overtime hours, and we don't get paid overtime hours, right? So that's what those extra hours help cushion, right, is you know, the overtime costs that we have, trying to make sure that there is someone there at all the times that there's supposed to be someone there. You know, that doesn't, you know, allow for and you know, again, when you we are very excited to be able to raise people's wages, you know, and have people make $19 and $20 an hour as a base, but then you make $30 or $35 on overtime, right? Which again is great for the people that work for us, and we want them to make money, but like, how do we pay for that? If you know, I mean, like, it doesn't matter if you pay for the hours and they're less hours, and you pay at a higher rate, you get more money, but it's still, you know, it still leaves you in a hole, right? You know, it still leaves you in a deficit. So be on the lookout for that. Thanks for a great meeting today.
Hey, one more thing.
Yes.
Social next
That's right.
month is our first social of the year. It will be at the Elgin Training Center, and you will get a flyer through your email, and keep that date open. That is the last Thursday of there we go. Exactly. So you're going to see that pop up, and please circulate it to your friends and neighbors that you know of who are connected to AID, and let's have a great turnout like we did last year.
Yeah. And
Can you send that out to us?
Yeah, it's going to come out. I'm just, I just had it pulled up. It's the final version, but it's going to be at Bose Road. And it'll be dessert and coffee and tea and networking like we did last year. Last year we did it at at Aurora, at our admin office in Aurora. So this year we're doing it in Elgin. So it will be coming out, and then it'll be out. We'll put it on the the Facebook group, and we'll put it out on AID Facebook and the website and all that kind of stuff too. But that's just hot off the presses. It just got done being created. So if you have any, special dessert requests, let us know, because I've got Cheryl working on getting our desserts set up. Thanks, everybody. We really, really appreciate it. Thank you for reminding me of that, Jim. I had it up all this time. To show.
I was afraid you were going to say happy hour, but it is a social. So, hey, everybody, thank you for all your great ideas tonight. I think you've given Lori a lot to think about. So hopefully we'll see you all next month in person.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.